Hey everyone, it's Medina from the Clarinet Life, keeping it classically real for y'all. Hope everybody is doing all right. So welcome to the Clarinet Life, where we talk all things clarinet, chamber music, and life as a New York City classical musician. If that sounds like your jam, hit subscribe and join the family. All right, we are continuing moving forward with our Etude series, looking at the Melodious and Progressive Studies for Clarinet, Book 1, David Hite edition. And I talked about in a previous video that Carl Baermann is a prolific clarinetist and composer, and he's written a lot of things for clarinet, the complete method for clarinet. So this etude that I'm going over, or these etudes actually from this book, comes from his Opus 63 from the clarinet method. Okay, so we're going to check out etude number 5. And this is the one that's in A minor. So another etude in A minor. And I have to say, I really like this one. It's really kind of dance-like, it's fun. And so that's kind of what attracted me to this particular etude. Now, if you are following along with the Carl Fischer edition of the Complete Method for Clarinet, Baermann, let's take a look and see what page you guys might be on. All right, so in the Melodious Studies book, it's page 61, number 5. However, if you're using the Baermann Carl Fischer version, it's number 15, and in my edition, it's page 34. Okay, and one of the things that I want to remind you guys about is, every time we purchase a piece of music, someone is editing it or giving suggestions of what the composer's intent was. Obviously, Carl Baermann is no longer alive, so we have to use history and use whatever tools and materials and resources necessary to try to convey what that composer's intent was. And so, what you might see if you're looking at a different version, because there's other, you can get the Opus 63 in a different version. It doesn't have to be Carl Fischer or the Hite Southern Music Company version either. Baermann is so popular, you can find it in other editions in different countries. But what you're going to find is sometimes you'll have additional suggestions or some changes. And so with this one, the Baermann Carl Fischer, it says, in strict time and with full broad tone. Whereas with the Hite, that directive is not even on here. Now I'm going to be looking at the Hite version because that's what I was playing off of. But again, you can look here at the Baermann Carl Fischer. Okay, so let's see what we're looking at today. Andante con moto. Con moto means with motion. Andante means it's a type of tempo that suggests walking. It means walking. So I always like to tell my students, if you're a New Yorker, your Andante is faster than others. But in all seriousness, though, Andante is a type of moderate tempo. So we have, when I hear or see tempos that say Andante con moto, to me that kind of contradicts this thing of strict tempo, must be this way. I feel like it's more of the style needs to be consistent as opposed to necessarily the tempo, but it's all about the feel and what you're trying to convey. I definitely don't think it should be one of those things where it's swaying all back and forth with different tempi. No, but what I am saying is there might be areas and moments where you use a little rubato. Rubato means to rob time. That means technically rubato is you slow down a little bit, but then you have to make up for that time by pushing a little bit forward. So you're like borrowing the time and then you're giving it back. And sometimes things like that happen, and I do that here. For example, that area, I like to put a little bit of time on that last beat. So, and we call that placing the beat, and you place a beat by using a combination of time. And that type of emphasis, if you're in chamber music, it's a way to cue your colleagues. Now, let's go back just a little bit more. I always like to get into the details of phrasing, but our time signature, it's common time, 4/4, common time, quarter note gets the beat, right? So 4 quarter notes per measure. All right, well, one of the things that strikes me is this kind of jaunty character, and I really like it a lot. And we start on the downbeat, beginning of the measure, with an accented note, right? So an accent, and I mentioned this before, it's like a little mini decrescendo where the emphasis is in the beginning of the note, and then there's a slight decay. Okay, so that bum, da 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 dee kind of gives us that little kind of regal kind of jaunty kind of character, in my opinion. I kind of envision this with people dancing and moving around and all that sort of stuff. I really like the shape and the phrasing that Hite suggests. In terms of breathing, there are comments there to suggest when to breathe or when a phrase ends and begins. And I think for me, I might not take that breath right away. Let's see. It's not necessary. I do find that I do a little bit of a take, but it's not really, I'm not really taking really much of a breath. So I don't think you need to. I think you could go the 4 bars without doing that. It's totally not necessary. You don't have to. As a matter of fact, remember, when you take that breath, you're breaking up a phrase. You're breaking up the sound because it takes time to take a breath. So if you don't need to take the breath and you're able to fulfill that whole phrase, then I suggest that's the best thing to do. So if you find yourself kind of running out of breath, long tone exercises can help deal with that. And in time, if you're consistent with your practicing with a combination of long tones and that consistency, you're going to find that you're going to build more stamina and be able to sustain phrases much easier. Now, one of the things that I notice here is that staccato note and the whole slur business. So I'm looking at measure 2 in number 5, and the downbeat of measure 2, I have a G sharp 8th note with a staccato marking and then the slur. So essentially it's the end of that little segment, the A, and then an octave A above, and then the G sharp. There are 2 ways to release a note. Releasing a note means to end a note. The 2 basic ways are you stop the breath, which stops the sound, that stops the vibration of the reed, or you can stop the vibration of the reed and the sound by using your tongue. Sometimes we call it clipping when you do that. So you have to be gentle, because if you go, that's unmusical and it's uncharacteristic for this piece. Now, some music, they might want that, and that's fine. But for this etude, that's not what they're looking for. So one of the things that you might find yourself practicing is how to be gentle with your tongue. And that means practicing, in a way that reminds you of the style, and reminding you that a lot of times with tonguing, we think that the tongue is the most important thing, but it's actually the breath and how we sustain that note and carry that note. Right? So it's really important that you kind of explore that. And this is something that doesn't go away, especially when you have like a slur to tongue to, and that's the end of a slurred note comes with a tongued note. So that's one of the things that's super cool about these etudes, is you can encounter that and figure out, okay, how do I want to do this? All right, let's see. I'm going to move forward here, and I think one of the strong points of this particular etude is how it helps us move forward in the phrasing. And you know, a lot of times we associate ascending, going up, with being louder. Excuse me, that's not always the case, but when we look at measure 9 going to 10, that is the case. Yeah, and it just flows so beautifully. Now, in this instance, we do have this slurred tongue too. So those staccato notes, just make sure that you are stopping that note with the tongue. And I want to remind you, and I always remind my students, that when we're creating these short and separated notes, the air is not being hoo, hoo, hoo. It's not being retaken. It's just that our tongue is kind of creating a little bit of a disruption in the airflow, but that airflow is constant and it's the same. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? So one of the things that I like about etudes is it introduces you to form. And even though this etude is not very long, we have an opportunity to kind of see contrasting sections. And so we start with this, right? That sort of deal. But then when we get to, I'm looking at that rehearsal 15, 15, 16, 17. Measure 17, we have some new material, okay? And so 15, so basically measure 1 to like 16, that's kind of the end of like a section of the music. And then we have this really cool spot. It's kind of like a development. We don't see this type of music anywhere else in the etude. Right, so it's kind of really majestic, and I really love it. So it's really important that we keep that feel of the kind of that jaunty feel that I was talking about, like yay kind of feel. But it is new material, and in that beginning section in measure 17, we have a lot of, I say staccati, multiple staccati. That might be a technical term or something I just made up. But anyway, there's a lot of staccato notes, and so I'm really using my tongue to help me with that. And we have a forzando on the downbeat, and that forzando kind of helps bring us to the next next beat, and then we see that in the next measure again. And what I love, and this is one of the strengths of Baermann, is his contrast of hard and soft. You know, we had right, that sort of deal, and then right, much more gentle and flowy. Super cool. And then we have this. Now what Baermann's doing is he's like kind of combining everything together with what we had in the beginning with this kind of new section happening. I want to talk about a little bit more about phrasing. So measure 20, 21, 22. And then we have a breath. That's a clear break. So we have that comma and we have the rest. You have a choice of either placing that or moving forward. Or so you notice bump up B. I slowed it down a little bit. Now, if you're looking at that Baermann Carl Fischer version, it might not want you to do that, but you can, because it's like we've cadenced, but it's not necessary. And so here's one of the things that I will say is when you're doing these little things of placing notes, you know, being musical with time, be careful that you don't overdo it. And one of the great things about etudes is these are exercises, yes, but it's also a piece of music that you could perform if you wanted to. I think these are great standalone etudes that you can easily play and put in a concert, or but it's important that you don't overdo it, because then you lose the specialness of it, the sparkliness of it. And it's kind of like the saying of the person that always kind of like yells all the time. The effectiveness of the yelling goes away and you just kind of tune it out. Well, you don't want to be, what I say, too predictable. So at the end of a phrase or a cadence, you don't have to slow down all the time. As a matter of fact, I think that you shouldn't do that. Even though I am guilty as charged for doing stuff like that, you all in moderation, right? It has to be all within the style of the music that the composer has written. So don't overdo it. But it's something that you could try. I'm one of those people where I like to try all sorts of stuff and do more than what I need to, and then kind of sift things out and simplify it, But everybody has their own method. But I do think that there's, if you're not going to at least try to see where you can ebb and flow or what possibilities there are, you might wind up sounding a little bit like washed out, unmusical, that sort of deal. So it's just a matter of picking and choosing the moments, right? In life and in music, there are moments. So that's what I'll say about that. I'll get off my soapbox now. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I'm moving along here, and we have some more of those forzandos. I'm looking at, let's see, measure 25, 26, so measure 26 and 27. So I'm doing that. I am putting my tongue on that F natural, but the air is the emphasis. And you don't really have to use your tongue if you don't want to, because you can use your air, but I actually do like to, because I feel like it kind of gives you a little bit of a place marker. So I think that's helpful with that. And then we have another section here. So again, I was talking about that slowing down sort of deal. I think in that particular section, it's helpful because it brings us to the return, the A. Right? Familiar material, ABA form is what I'm referring to when I say the A. Or A with a comma. It's not totally the same. But that's where I feel like it's helpful. And so here's the thing, musical ideas can also be functional, right? And so again, that's what's so cool about the Melodious Studies book, is that these etudes help with technique, but they also help us figure out how to phrase more and come up with ideas on how to do that musically. Yeah, let's see, what else can I find? Okay, well, I feel like it's pretty straightforward, but okay, so one thing I will say is whenever I see like rows of 16th notes, I ask myself, do I need to do a little bit of finger work? So I'm looking at rehearsal 35, which is also measure 35, by the way. There's a mezzo forte, and I'm looking at the F natural. It's on beat 2, 16th notes. I'm specifically looking at that section. Now, if you find this a little bit challenging with 16th notes, the thing that I say is, if there's any kind of passage that's technical that's kind of giving you a little bit of trouble, isolate it. Don't be like, I'll do it tomorrow, it's okay. Because the thing is, the way the mind works and the body works is you need to do those layers, right? Every time you do something, that's a layer, and that layer is a type of memory that we have. And that's why consistency is so important, in combination of certain other exercises. And so we want to have the right stuff. And I say do it all slurred as a form of practicing, and then build your way. So this is how I would practice something like this. I'm just going to look at measure 35. I'm just looking at those beats 2, 3, and 4. So I would do 2s, 3s, and 4s. And if you've had the opportunity to watch any other episodes that I've had on Krebs, you'll see that I do this also. It's a great technique because you could use it for all music. And I stopped on the downbeat of measure 36. So those were 2s. So we have 1 and 1 and 1, 2, 3, 1. So I'm keeping the beat, but my division is changing. Right, that was before. So 1, 2, 3. And that's going to feel a little bit jarring because that's not the grouping that the composer is giving us, but that's okay. Then 4s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we had previously. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to find that you're going to start getting that smoothness that you need. Now, whenever you do this, you want to use a metronome. And once you get it to those 4s, in this case, the reason why I stop at 4, not going into 6 and to 8, is because the as written, what the composers wrote out is groupings of 4/16ths. But then you want to add more tempo, like add more speed. So that will help you with your fingers if you find that some of these 16th note passages are giving you a little bit of trouble. Yeah. And in the end, I do a little bit of the slowdown also. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to start towards the end, play just a little bit. This is one of my favorite sections too. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would love for you to join the family. If you've played this etude, let me know and let me know your thoughts about it. If you've gotten the Melodious Studies book or maybe the Baermann Complete Method Opus 63 book, let me know also in the comments below. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.